Step carefully into timeless witnesses, where history refuses to stay silent. Our journey begins in Kyoto, Japan, October 8, 1594. The acrid smoke of burning wood clings to the air, mingling with a stench far worse, the kind that makes the gathered crowd press close together in fear. You stand among them, peasants beside merchants, samurai beside servants, all bound by the same dreadful fascination. The great iron cauldron sits like a black mouth in the center of the execution grounds, steam rising from its depths, like ghostly fingers reaching toward the autumn sky. You can hear the oil bubbling, that sound a low, persistent simmer that seems to crawl under your skin. The executioner's assistants feed the fire beneath, and with each fresh log the flames dance higher, casting flickering shadows across the faces of the condemned. Two figures kneel before the cauldron, bound and guarded. A man, broad-shouldered despite his restraints, his dark hair matted with sweat and dirt, and beside him a child, perhaps 7 years old, his small body trembling, not from cold, but from a terror so profound it radiates from him like heat from the boiling oil. The man is Ishikawa Goemon. The child is his son. In moments, they will both be lowered into that cauldron of death, and you will witness something that will haunt you for the rest of your days. A father's love transformed into both salvation and damnation. A final act of defiance that will echo through the centuries. But to understand this moment, you must first understand the man whose life led to this horrific end. You must step back into the shadows of a Japan torn apart by war, where honor and survival danced together on the edge of a sword, and where legends were born from the ashes of a burning world. Before diving into these forgotten stories of survival and suffering, if you enjoy learning about the hidden truths of history, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content like this. And please comment below to let me know where you're listening from. I find it incredible that we're exploring these ancient stories together from different parts of the world, connected across time and space by our shared curiosity about the past. The year is 1558, and Japan bleeds. The Sengoku period, the age of warring states, has turned the country into a battlefield where warlords fight for territory, power, and the dream of unification. It's into this chaos that a child is born, a child who will grow up to become either the greatest thief in Japanese history or its most beloved folk hero, depending on who tells the story. His name, they say, was originally Saneda Kuronoshin. Born to a samurai family in service to the Miyoshi clan in Iga province, he might have lived a life of honor and duty, serving his lord and dying with sword in hand. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. Picture a 15-year-old boy standing over the bodies of his parents, their blood seeping into the wooden floors of what was once his home. The men of the Ashikaga shogunate had come in the night, swift and merciless. His father, Ishikawa Akashi, had been marked for death. His crime was nothing more than being on the wrong side of a political divide that shifted like sand in a windstorm. The boy's hands shake as he grips his father's sword, still warm from the blood of his, but they are gone now, melted back into the darkness from which they came, leaving only corpses and the stench of violence. This is the moment Saneda Kuronoshin dies, and something else is born, something harder, angrier, more dangerous. He becomes a student of Momochi Sandayu, one of the most feared ninja masters of the Iga school. Here, in the mountain strongholds where shadows are weapons and silence is armor, The boy learns the arts that will make him legendary. He studies the way of the blade, the secrets of infiltration, the deadly dance of assassination that turns ordinary men into whispers in the night. But even in this world of discipline and death, his heart betrays him. They say he fell in love with one of his master's concubines, a woman whose name history has forgotten, but whose beauty must have been worth dying for. When Momochi Sandayu discovers the affair, there can be only one response: exile or death. The boy chooses exile, but not before stealing something precious from his master, a sword of legendary craftsmanship, a blade that seems to sing with its own inner light. It's a theft that will haunt him, a crime that brands him as a nukin, a runaway ninja, a man without honor or home. And so Sanada Kuronoshin disappears into the mists of history, and from those mists emerges Ishikawa Goemon, a name that will become synonymous with both terror and hope, depending on whether you counted yourself among the rich or the poor. The Kansai region in the late 16th century is a place where wealth flows like water to those who know how to channel it. While the peasants scrape by on whatever trickles down from their betters, the merchant class grows fat on trade. The samurai lords accumulate treasures like dragons hoarding gold, and the Buddhist temples become repositories of riches that would make emperors weep with envy. Into this world of extreme inequality comes Ishikawa Goemon, and he brings with him a different kind of justice. Imagine the scene: a moonless night in 1580, and the mansion of a wealthy merchant in Osaka lies silent under the stars. The guards patrol their routes with the lazy confidence of men who have never faced real danger. Inside, the merchant sleeps peacefully, surrounded by silk and gold, his dreams filled with profit margins and expanding trade routes. He doesn't hear the soft footsteps on his roof. He doesn't see the shadow that detaches itself from the darkness and flows through his window like liquid night. He only awakens when he feels the cold steel of a blade against his throat and looks up into eyes that seem to hold all the fury of the dispossessed. "Your money or your life," Goemon whispers. But his voice carries the weight of something deeper than simple theft. This is not just robbery. It's redistribution. The merchant's gold, earned from the sweat of farmers and the labor of craftsmen, will find its way back to those who need it most. By dawn, the merchant's strongboxes are empty, and in the villages outside Osaka, mysterious gifts begin to appear. A bag of rice on a widow's doorstep, silver coins pressed into the hands of a crippled beggar, medicine for a sick child, paid for with gold that bears the mark of the merchant's personal seal. This is how legends are born, not in the grand halls of power, but in the quiet moments of kindness that follow acts of defiance. Gosum and Handus's band of followers become ghosts in the night, striking at the wealthy and powerful, redistributing their wealth to those who have nothing. The common people begin to whisper his name with something approaching reverence. Here, finally, is someone who understands their struggles, someone willing to risk everything to right the balance of a world that has tilted too far toward the powerful. Children grow up hearing stories of the noble thief who robs from the rich to give to the poor. And in their imaginations, Goemon becomes something more than human, a force of nature, a champion of justice. But legends, as Goemon will discover, are dangerous things. They attract attention from those who prefer their injustices to remain undisturbed. While Goemon builds his reputation in the shadows, another man rises to prominence in the full light of day. Toyotomi Hideyoshi, born to a peasant family, has clawed his way up from the lowest rungs of society to become one of the most powerful men in Japan. Where Guman uses stealth and cunning, Hideyoshi employs armies and diplomacy. Where Guman seeks to redistribute wealth, Hideyoshi seeks to accumulate it. The two men are mirror images of each other, both born to nothing, both risen to prominence through sheer force of will, both commanding the loyalty of those who serve them. But their paths diverge in ways that will prove fatal. Hideyoshi is the great unifier, the man who will bring an end to the Sengoku period and establish a new order. After the death of his master, Oda Nobunaga, in 1582, Hideyoshi has systematically conquered or negotiated the submission of the warring daimyo. By the 1590s, he stood at the pinnacle of power, ruling over a Japan that has known peace for the first time in generations. But peace, Hideyoshi understands, requires more than just military victory. It requires the elimination of all sources of disorder, all challenges to authority, and in the shadows of his new order. Ishikawa Gomen represents everything he seeks to destroy: lawlessness, rebellion, the romantic notion that individual conscience can triumph over state power. The inevitable confrontation comes not through any grand design, but through the kind of personal tragedy that turns political enemies into blood enemies. Gomen's wife, Otaki, a woman whose beauty was said to rival that of the court ladies, is taken by Hideyoshi's agents. Some say she was killed for her husband's crimes. Others claim she died trying to protect their son from capture. What matters is not the exact details of her death, but the rage it kindles in Gomen's heart. The man who had been content to steal from the wealthy and redistribute their gold now thirsts for something more fundamental. Revenge. Fushimi Castle, Kyoto, September 1594. The castle sits like a crown jewel on the hill, its white walls gleaming in the moonlight. Inside, Toyotomi Hideyoshi sleeps the sleep of the powerful, surrounded by layers of security that would make infiltration seem impossible to anyone but a master of the shadow arts. But Gomen has spent decades perfecting the art of the impossible. He moves through the castle like a ghost, his training under Momochi Sandayu serving him well, past the outer guards, through the maze of corridors, up the stairs that lead to the private chambers of the man who rules Japan. The room is surprisingly simple for such a powerful man. Hideyoshi lies on his futon, breathing deep and regular. For a moment, Gomen simply watches him. This peasant who became a king. This man who has united Japan under his will. In sleep, he looks almost innocent. A small man with weathered features and graying hair. Nothing to suggest the iron will that has reshaped a nation. Gomen draws his blade, the stolen sword that has been his companion for so many years. The steel catches the moonlight and seems to glow with its own inner fire. One quick thrust, and the tyrant will be dead. Japan will be free of his oppression, and Otaki will be avenged. But as he raises the weapon, his foot catches the edge of a small table, a bronze bell, placed there for decoration or ceremony, tumbles to the floor with a sound like thunder in the silence of the night. The effect is immediate and catastrophic. Guards pour into the room from hidden alcoves, their swords already drawn. Hideyoshi bolts upright, his eyes wide but already calculating. In seconds, Gomen finds himself surrounded, his blade at the throat of a man he can no longer kill. So, Hideyoshi says, his voice remarkably calm for a man who has just awakened to find an assassin at his bedside. The great Ishikawa Goemon finally shows his face. "I had wondered when you would come for me." Goemon says nothing. There is nothing to say. He has failed. And failure, he knows, means death. But not just death. Something worse. Something that will make death seem like a mercy. The trial, if it can be called that, is swift and predetermined. Goemon stands before Hideyoshi in the great hall of Fushimi Castle, his hands bound, his head held high. Around them, the court officials and military commanders watch with the hungry eyes of men who know they are witnessing history. Hideyoshi, seated on his throne, studies the man who tried to kill him with something that might almost be admiration. Here, after all, is a worthy enemy, a man who nearly succeeded where so many others have failed. "Ishikawa Goemon," Hideyoshi announces, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "You stand accused of theft, banditry, and the attempted assassination of the rightful ruler of Japan. How do you answer these charges?" Goemon's response is said to have been magnificent in its defiance. Looking directly into Hideyoshi's eyes, he speaks not as a criminal begging for mercy, but as a man who has lived by his own code and is prepared to die by it. "I am guilty of all you have named," he says, his voice strong and clear. "I have stolen from the rich to give to the poor. I have defied the laws of those who would grind the weak beneath their heels. And yes, I have tried to kill you, because you are a tyrant who has forgotten that power exists to serve the people, not to dominate them." The court erupts in shocked murmurs. No one speaks to Hideyoshi like this. No one challenges his authority so directly. But Gospon is not finished. "If these are crimes, then I am proud to be a criminal. If defying injustice is treason, then I am happy to be a traitor. Do what you will with me, but know that others will follow in my footsteps. The poor will always need champions, and tyrants will always breed rebellion." Hideyoshi's face remains impassive throughout this speech, but those who know him well can see the fury building behind his eyes. This is not just defiance. It's a direct challenge to everything he has built, everything he represents. "You speak of justice," Hideyoshi replies, his voice dangerously quiet. "But justice requires order, and order requires that those who break the law face consequences. You have lived by violence, Ishikawa Goemon. Now you will die by it. The sentence, when it comes, is so shocking that even the hardened courtiers gasp. Death by boiling, a punishment so rare and so terrible that it is reserved for only the most heinous crimes." But Hideyoshi is not finished. "And since you claim to be a champion of the people," he continues, "let us see how much you truly love them. Your son will share your fate. He will die as you die, slowly and in agony, so that all who witness it will understand the price of defying the rightful order." Now finally, Goemon's composure cracks. His son, his innocent boy, who has done nothing but bear the name of his father, will die for his crimes. The pain that crosses Goemon's face is worse than any physical torture could be. "The boy is blameless," he says, and for the first time his voice breaks. "Kill me as you will, but spare the child. He has done nothing to deserve this fate." But Hideyoshi is implacable. "The child is your child. He carries your blood, your name, your legacy of defiance. Japan will be better without both of you." The night before the execution, Goemon sits in his cell with his son pressed against his side. The boy, perhaps 7 years old, doesn't fully understand what is about to happen, but he can feel his father's anguish like a physical weight. "Papa," the child whispers, "are we going to die tomorrow?" Goemon looks down at his son, this innocent child who has become caught up in the deadly game between his father and the ruler of Japan. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that he will die for sins he never committed, for a rebellion he never chose to join? "Yes," Goemon says finally, because he has always believed in truth even when it is terrible. "We are going to die tomorrow." The boy is quiet for a long moment, processing this information with the strange calm that children sometimes show in the face of incomprehensible disaster. "Will it hurt?" he asks. Goemon closes his eyes, fighting back tears. "Yes," he says again. "It will hurt. Will you be with me?" "Yes," Goemon promises, pulling his son closer. "I will be with you. I will hold you and I will not let go, no matter what happens." The boy nods, seemingly satisfied with this answer. In his child's mind, perhaps, death is not so frightening if his father is there to face it with him. Goemon spends the rest of the night composing his death poem, a tradition that allows condemned men to leave behind some final statement of their philosophy or beliefs. His poem, when it is finished, is both a confession and a prophecy. Though you may boil a thief's body, you cannot boil away his spirit. Thieves will always exist, as long as there are rich and poor. It is a poem that speaks not just to his own fate, but to the eternal struggle between the powerful and the powerless, the rich and the poor, the rulers and the ruled. In death, Goemon sees himself as part of something larger, a force that cannot be destroyed by any punishment, no matter how terrible. October 8th, 1594. Nanzengi Temple, Kyoto. Dawn comes too quickly, and not quickly enough. The execution ground is already crowded with spectators, merchants and peasants, samurai and monks, all drawn by the terrible fascination of witnessing something unprecedented. Death by boiling has been reserved for the most heinous crimes, and most of those present have never seen it performed. The great iron cauldron sits in the center of the cleared space, its black surface gleaming dully in the morning sun. Steam rises from its depths, and the smell of heated oil fills the air. The fire beneath has been burning since before dawn, and the oil inside is now at a temperature that would kill a man in moments. Goemon and his son are brought forward in chains. The boy stays close to his father's side, his small hand clutching at Goemon's robes. The crowd presses closer, their voices a low murmur of anticipation and horror. Hideyoshi himself is present, seated on a raised platform where he can observe the proceedings. His face is impassive, showing no emotion as he watches the man who tried to kill him face his final moments. The executioner, a grim-faced man who has performed this terrible duty before, steps forward. He explains the procedure with the clinical detachment of a professional. The condemned will be lowered into the oil feet first, allowing them to experience the full agony of their death. There will be no mercy, no quick end to their suffering. Goemon listens to these words without flinching, but his grip on his son's hand tightens. The boy looks up at him with eyes wide with terror, but also with trust. Even now, at the end of everything, he believes his father will protect him. "Remember what I told you," Goemon whispers to his son. "I will not let go." The guards move to separate them, to take the boy to his own chain that will lower him into the cauldron. But as they reach for the child, Goemon does something that will be remembered for centuries. He lifts his son high above his head, holding him as far from the boiling oil as his strength will allow. The chains that bind him make this a nearly impossible feat. But desperation lends him power. His muscles strain, his shoulders burn, but he holds the boy aloft. The crowd gasps. This is not how executions are supposed to proceed. The condemned are meant to submit, to accept their fate with dignity or terror, but not to resist. But Goemon is not just resisting. He is making a statement. "If you must have our deaths," he shouts, his voice carrying across the silent crowd, "then take mine first. Let the boy die quickly, without suffering." The executioner looks to Hideyoshi for guidance. This is not in the script, but Hideyoshi's face remains stone, and he nods for the execution to proceed. The chain lowers, and Goemon's feet touch the surface of the oil. The effect is immediate and horrific. His body arches in agony as the boiling liquid burns through his skin. But still he holds his son high above his head. The boy screams, but whether from terror or from the heat radiating from below, it's impossible to tell. Lower they go, the chain descending link by link. The oil reaches Goemon's knees, then his waist, then his chest. Each inch is an eternity of agony, but still his arms remain steady. Still he holds his son above the killing heat. The crowd watches in stunned silence. Some are weeping openly. Others have turned away, unable to bear the sight. But all understand that they are witnessing something unprecedented. A father's love made manifest in the most extreme circumstances imaginable. As the oil reaches Goemon's neck, his strength finally begins to fail. His arms tremble, and the boy begins to slip. But instead of letting his son fall into the boiling cauldron, Goemon does something that will haunt the witnesses for the rest of their lives. He plunges the child down into the oil with him, driving him deep beneath the surface in one swift, merciful motion. The boy's scream is cut short as the boiling liquid closes over his head, killing him instantly instead of slowly. Then Goemon lifts his son's body high above his head once more, holding it like a banner of defiance as his own life ebbs away. Even as the oil destroys his body, even as death claims him, he maintains his grip on the child he couldn't save, but could at least spare from prolonged agony. The last image the crowd sees is Goemon's face, burned and dying but still defiant. His eyes fixed on Hideyoshi with an expression of such concentrated hatred that those who witness it will claim they felt the temperature drop. Then he sinks beneath the surface, taking his son with him, and the terrible spectacle is over. The execution of Ishikawa Goemon and his son was meant to be a demonstration of the price of defying authority. Hideyoshi intended it as a warning, a spectacle so terrible that it would crush any thoughts of rebellion in the hearts of those who witnessed it. Instead, it became something else entirely. The image of a father sacrificing everything to protect his child, even in the face of death, resonated with the common people in ways that Hideyoshi never anticipated. Far from destroying Goemon's legacy, the execution transformed him from a notorious bandit into a folk hero of mythic proportions. The story spread across Japan like wildfire, growing in the telling. Goemon became not just a man, but a symbol, the embodiment of resistance to tyranny, of love for family, of the eternal struggle between the powerful and the powerless. His death poem, smuggled out of his prison cell, became a kind of anthem for the dispossessed. In the years that followed, other thieves and rebels would claim his name, carrying on his legacy of stealing from the rich to give to the poor. The authorities would capture and execute these pretenders. But it didn't matter. The idea of Gaumon had become more powerful than the man himself. The large iron bathtub came to be called a Go-Mumburo in his honor, a darkly ironic tribute that transformed the instrument of his death into a symbol of cleansing and renewal. Every time someone took a hot bath, they would remember the man who died in boiling oil for the crime of loving justice more than life. Kabuki theaters would immortalize his story in plays that drew crowds for centuries. Artists would paint him as a hero of superhuman strength, capable of feats that no mortal man could achieve. Writers would craft novels about his adventures, each more fantastical than the last. But perhaps the most enduring legacy of Ishikawa Gomen is the question his life and death pose. In a world where power is concentrated in the hands of the few, where the rich grow richer while the poor struggle to survive, what is the proper response? Is it submission to authority, or is it rebellion in the name of justice? Gomen chose rebellion, and it cost him everything. Yet in losing his life, he gained something that Hideyoshi, for all his power, could never possess: immortality in the hearts and minds of the people. 4 centuries have passed since Ishikawa Gomen and his son died in that boiling cauldron. But the questions their deaths raise remain as relevant today as they were in 1594. The world has changed beyond recognition. We have technologies that would seem like magic to the people of the Sengoku period. Governments that claim to represent the will of the people. Systems of law that promise justice for all. Yet the fundamental inequalities that drove Gomen to rebellion persist. The rich still grow richer while the poor struggle to survive. Powerful people still escape consequences for their actions while the powerless suffer for crimes they didn't commit. The machinery of oppression has become more sophisticated, but it has not disappeared, and so the legend of Gomen endures, not as a historical curiosity, but as a living challenge. He reminds us that there are times when the laws of the state conflict with the laws of conscience, when the demands of justice require us to risk everything we hold dear. He also reminds us of the terrible price such choices extract. Gopon's rebellion cost him his life, his family, and any chance of seeing the world he fought to create. His son died for his father's choices, an innocent victim of a war he never chose to join. The image of that final moment, a father holding his dying son above his head, defying his executioners even as his own life slipped away, remains one of the most powerful symbols of both love and loss in human history. It shows us what we are capable of in our finest moments, and what we are willing to sacrifice for the things we believe in. In the end, perhaps that is the true legacy of Ishikawa Gomen. Not the theft or the rebellion, but the reminder that there are things in this world worth dying for, and that the greatest tragedies often arise from the collision between love and justice, between the desire to protect those we care about, and the need to fight for what is right. The man who was boiled alive with his son became something more than a historical figure. He became a mirror in which we can see our own souls, and a question that each generation must answer for itself. When faced with injustice, will we submit or will we resist? And if we choose resistance, are we prepared to pay the price? The iron cauldron has long since cooled, but the fire that drove Ishikawa Gomen to his death burns on, waiting for the next person brave enough or foolish enough to pick up the banner he left behind. In the quiet moments after midnight, when the world is still and the powerful sleep peacefully in their beds. Some say you can still hear the echo of a father's love, ringing out across the centuries, defiant, unbroken, eternal.